Our region's business is sponsored by PNC for the achiever in you.
Whether you're climbing the corporate ladder or building a business of your own, you're likely to be challenged along the way by an ethical dilemma or two, or maybe even more. Just what do you do if your boss asks you to do something unethical, immoral, or even illegal? What happens if you've made a promise to a supplier, customer, or colleague that's proving difficult to keep? Well, these are just two of the 13 dilemmas detailed in the just-released Business Ethics Field Guide. Brad Agle's the co-author. He's professor of ethics and leadership at the Marriott School of Management at Brigham Young University. And Bill O'Rourke helped write the book. He's a retired Pittsburgh business executive who lectures on business ethics, among other things. Welcome. Good to see you both. Welcome.
Good to be here.
Yeah, and welcome back to Pittsburgh. You've been gone for a few years in Utah, but you spent a good part of your career here, right?
17 years at Pitt. Hail to Pitt.
Yeah, there you go. Good. Well, tell me a little bit about the book. How did this come about?
So I've been teaching executive MBAs now for about 18 years. University of Pittsburgh runs 3 programs, runs one here in Pittsburgh, one in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and one in the Czech Republic in Prague. And the first assignment that my students give in the executive MBA program, these are of course folks who've got a lot of work experience, is to write up some ethical dilemma that they have faced in the workplace. And so I've collected hundreds and hundreds and thousands of these over the last almost 20 years. And these folks are not all that interested in philosophy, except to the extent that the philosophy will actually help them in their current job.
Sure.
They want practical solutions. And so several years ago, I started noticing patterns in the dilemmas that they would give me. And I thought, well, I wonder how many dilemmas are there when you get right down to the fundamental dilemma. When you get to the details, boy, you never know what you're going to get. You get all kinds of interesting things. But the reality is there are only a certain set of types of dilemmas that we face. And I realized that no one had done that research.
Huh.
And so what I and my colleagues did, along with Bill, is that we took several hundreds of these and we just started doing what is called qualitative analysis to figure out how many fundamental ethical dilemmas do people deal with in their daily lives in terms of the workplace. And
there you go.
We got 13.
You got 13, which is fascinating. Kind of interesting. Number 13 popped out of that process as well. Bill, I know this is near and dear to your heart. We've had you on over the years. You were an executive with Alcoa, had to grapple with some of these types of issues, and now you've made a second career out of it to some degree, right?
I have. When Brad was in Pitt, he used to invite me to be a guest lecturer at his classes. And then when he went to Provo, Utah, he called one day and said, Bill, any chance you'd come to Provo? So I've been to Brigham Young now every semester for the last 8 years that he's been there.
Okay.
And I enjoy speaking with the students. And then when Brad and his friend Aaron Miller, who was also a professor at Brigham Young, when they decided to write the book, I think they wanted some of my examples in there to spice it up, so it's not all an academic work.
Well, it is, and you think that the practical aspect of this adds a lot of value? Think of yourself coming up through the ranks in corporate America over the years. Would it have been helpful to have something like this?
Very, very much so, very much so. And there's, as you mentioned, there's 13 different categories in there. One that's natural is conflict of interest. And one story I tell—
something we've been watching play out at the national level recently.
Yeah, it sure is.
Both our current president and the president's opponent in the general election.
Yeah.
Both significant issues.
Right, but one of the stories that I like to tell is that I had a corporate medical director that reported to me, and he's a smart gentleman, but he didn't even realize he had an ethical issue. And that's our first lesson in the book is, first you have to realize you have one. He came back from a honeymoon and told me that he just received a $2,000 wedding present from 2 of his medical friends, who were also consultants to Alcoa, making money under an epidemiological consulting contract. So I suggested to him that maybe you just invited 2 suppliers to your wedding and they gave you a kickback. He said, oh no, this was out of the goodness of their heart. So he talked it through for about an hour and he said I should return that money. And he could have avoided that. He should have written on the invitation, based on our business relationship, gifts would be inappropriate, hope to see you at the wedding. And that could have avoided the whole thing.
Interesting, but it does speak to the mindfulness to some degree that one needs to bring to ethics in the workplace or wherever.
That's correct. Yeah, in fact, on the question of conflict of interest, people try to deny that they have conflicts of interest, which I always find interesting. It sounds bad, right? It sounds like, oh, you know, you got a conflict of interest. The reality is the only people who don't have conflicts of interest are people who have no interest.
That's probably true.
As soon as you start having friends, family, you're in different organizations, Conflicts of interest are natural. In fact, I tell my students, I said, look for those conflicts of interest. Engage those conflicts of interest. When you figure out you've got a conflict of interest, pat yourself on the back. You're now important enough to have a conflict of interest. Because the conflict of interest itself is not bad. It's how you manage it.
Yeah.
And if you deny that you have it, then you're not going to manage it well. If you're looking for it and you see it, then you can manage it well.
Yeah, the conflicts are unavoidable.
They are.
But what do you do?
Correct.
And how do you navigate your way through it? So what's been you self-published this. So
we did.
It's been out since late last year. What's the response been like? You getting pickup? You getting interest?
I think the response has been terrific. We primarily self-published it because we wanted to keep it fairly inexpensive for our students.
That's great.
The price of textbooks pretty high, and we didn't want to do that to our students. Consequently, we're the ones out there getting the word out, not a publisher. But the great thing is when people get the book and they read the book, the feedback has been incredibly positive. We're really thrilled. We've got about 10 colleges already who have picked it up and are using it in their
some
classrooms.
Companies are doing the same thing. They're starting to pick it up.
The ethics and compliance organizations at companies, they want us to come and talk to their leaders and their frontline managers who wrestle with these every day and give them some practical experience and some examples.
Wow, that's really cool. The book is called The Business Ethics Field Guide, an essential companion to leading your career and your organization to greatness. Oh, I love the promise there.
Do you see who wrote the foreword there, Bill?
And who wrote the foreword? It was
O'Neill.
Paul O'Neill,
Yeah,
former
the most
CEO
enlightened
of
leader
Alcoa.
that I've ever seen.
One of my favorite guys around Pittsburgh, that's for sure. Well, congratulations. Clearly needed. Oh, and if somebody wants to get a copy, how do they find it? Right?
Well, they can find it on Amazon, or they can go to ethicsfieldguide.com.
All right, very good. Brad Agle, Bill O'Rourke, the book again, The Business Ethics Field Guide. Good luck with it.
Thank you very
so
much.
much.
Yeah.
Great to be with you.
Appreciate
Great
it.
to be with you.
And we'll be back in a minute with a little dollars and cents. Stay with us.